gives me great pleasure to introduce our Provost, Dr. Ihab Abdulrahman, who's going to be opening the conference for us.
Good morning. Before I actually start my opening remarks, I think I should tell you this. I'm very familiar with TESOL and NileTESOL. I'm a physicist myself, but my wife has been participating in TESOL for so many years, and she has been an English teacher. So that's why I'm, being here today or giving the opening remarks. Actually, it's something very dear to me, and it's something that I'm, happy to do it. Dear colleagues, educators, I'm delighted to welcome you here at our beautiful AUC New Cairo campus for the 22nd Annual NileTESOL Conference. At AUC, we believe that you can never stop learning, whether it's to stay on top of the changes in your field, such as changes in teaching pedagogy or teaching technology, or personal professional development. This acquisition of knowledge is an ongoing process. As educators, we have an obligation to ensure we participate in knowledge exchanges and conferences, such as the NileTESOL. This is a great opportunity for professional development, as English has become the lingua franca, connecting researchers, teachers, policymakers, and other sectors around the world. It's imperative that we have strong English educators in both Egypt and abroad. EUC recognizes that lifelong learning is a value to uphold and promote, and for that reason, it, along with other values including excellence, is embedded into EUC core values. It is because of this that it gave me a great satisfaction to learn that the theme of this year's NileTESOL conference is excellence, students and educators in pursuit of lifelong learning. Being a lifelong learner is more than just a pursuit of knowledge throughout one's life. It is also about taking responsibility for your own education and recognizing that we as students must invest in the learning process. These values and beliefs are transcontinental, and that's illustrated by the diversity, another of EUC's core values. Of this year's conference participants, we represent 17 countries around the world today. I am proud that EUC is able to lead these important conversations, both through organizing this conference as well as through our faculty participating in many of the individual sessions taking place over the next 2 days. I want to thank EUC School of Continuing Education, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Academy of Liberal Arts, and the Department of English Language Instruction for all of their effort in making this next 2 days possible. I wish you all a productive and enjoyable 2 days ahead. Thank you.
My name is Robert Switzer. I'm the interim dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, and it's my great pleasure to follow up with the provost's remarks with my own welcome on behalf of the school. I'm also not new to being involved in this event for the past, I think this is my 5th year of being involved in this way. For the last 4, I was the Dean of the Academy of Liberal Arts, which is the home of the Department of English Language Instruction. The person who has that position right now, Dr. Hada Al-Shimi, is unable to be here, so let me extend a welcome on her behalf as well, and on behalf of the Academy of Liberal Arts. We are very proud of what ELI does. I have to say, though, that it's not just the last few years that I've learned about English language instruction and the ELI and the role that English language instruction has at this university and more broadly. I sort of feel that I've embodied a kind of lifelong learning myself, going back to my early years here. This is my, I think, 27th year at AUC, And it's been an interesting process to learn about ELI and about its position at the university. I've been very proud to work with ELI in recent years, as I mentioned, and some of the wonderful people, Nagwa Khasabgi, Rania Jabar, Alex Luco, Mary Mosman, Sophie Farah, I could go on, of the people that I've worked closely with in my role as dean. But I think back to a previous time, and names that you will remember, many of you, from earlier times, people like Moga Hafaz, Tom Farkas, Cynthia Sheikh Islami, Paul and Ginny Stevens, Anne Shalaby, my dear former neighbor Jonah Moose, who actually is here. Welcome, Jonah. And another neighbor from an earlier time that some of you may remember, Charmi Goma. And I mention Charmi because she was the one who invited me as a young, untenured assistant professor to participate in a series in 1995. What is that, 23 years ago? To give a lecture to ELI students. What I chose to talk about on that occasion was on reading and writing, the liberal arts in the age of technology. And when one thinks back to 1995, did they have technology? It was so primitive. It was such an innocent age in comparison to our own. You know, the Windows was just starting to emerge and so on. It was a very different time. None of us could have predicted where we would be today. Not so much the idea of a smartphone, but what we do with it. The social media and all of the various ways in which we interact with it, some of which we love, much of which we also find somehow scary. It's an interesting theme, lifetime learning, because you continue to grow and develop, but you also find that you're talking about the same things. My talk then was on liberal arts in the age of technology. Tomorrow I'm very honored to be giving a plenary, and the title that I chose is Lifelong Learning in the Age of Information. It's kind of similar. It's also, though, of course, the age of misinformation. And that's one of the great dangers of technology that I think we're dealing with, and that the role of English language instruction is it's not just the sort of technical or the fluency with language, because there's no distinction really between language and thinking. So all of you who teach English are also teaching thought, critical thought, teaching how to think it for people in a different language, but that's expanding their capacity for thought, the avenues of thought, their understanding of different people in the world. It's very much an element of preparing people to function in this wired world that we live in, and to prepare them to defend themselves against the onslaught of misinformation and an overabundance of information. And as we say, fake news. So this is a very key role for all of us, and it's something that is becoming more and more crucial as the world changes so rapidly on the impact of technology. It's an honor to be part of this conference. I want to extend also my appreciation for many people that have played a very key role in making this happen. Of course, the two co-chairs, Mary Mosman and Rania Jaber, I think deserve our thanks very much. Also, May Magdi, I want to mention, Hanan Faraz and Ebtahal Al-Badri from the School of Continuing Education, who've done so much work to make this happen. Our president, Alex Luco, Dina Barai, and really everyone involved. Many thanks. And I hope you're going to have a wonderful conference here at AUC. Thank you so much.
Well, I am Alex Luco, president of NileTESOL through 2017 up until tomorrow. And I wanted to welcome all of you to the 22nd Annual Conference, very appropriately themed Excellence, Students and Educators in the Pursuit of Lifelong Learning. This theme represents what everyone here in this room wants to achieve, which is excellence, as well as how we do it, which is through lifelong learning, because we never stop learning. So because of your dedication to the principles built into this year's theme by being here, I want to thank all of you for attending this conference today and tomorrow. Attendance at this conference demonstrates our own collective commitment to the professional development of ourselves and therefore the learning of our students. A conference such as this is a massive undertaking, And the fact that it happens once, let alone year after year, is a testament to those who diligently work to make sure that it runs smoothly. So all of those involved in making this conference deserve our gratitude. So first, I want to thank and recognize the efforts of the conference committee, whose names are in your program book. And so I do recommend you open up your book and look at those names. Those are people who've worked all year on this conference. I especially want to thank Rania Jaber and Dr. Mariam Osman, who were the conference co-chairs. They worked very hard with the organizing committee throughout the year on this conference, and we are very fortunate as NileTESOL to have their dedication, the dedication of the conference organizing committee, and of course, I'm personally very lucky to have them all as my own colleagues. I also want to thank the board of directors who I've worked with very closely this past year. They, of course, provided input and support for the conference when needed, but on top of that, the board has been very instrumental in activities throughout the year between the conferences which support our professional development. And these activities inspire some of the presentations which you will see here today and tomorrow. I also want to thank key partners of NileTESOL, including the Regional English Language Office at the U.S. Embassy, the British Council, Amadist, and last but not least, the American University in Cairo School of Continuing Education. Specifically, I have to, of course, mention two people who many of us here know well, Hanan Faris and Ebtahel Al-Badri of SCE, who do so much logistical support for this conference. They receive many emails and phone calls from the conference committee, from myself and from others, and they always follow through and do a wonderful job here. And of course, I cannot forget the publishers sponsoring this conference. I hope that you visit their tables today and tomorrow and look closely at the kinds of materials they have to offer, and keep them in mind throughout the year when you're thinking of new ways to teach your courses. So I alluded earlier in my remarks here to that gap of time in between conferences, and every year there are so many things that NileTESOL does and so many things that the members accomplish, and I want to go over some of those now. For instance, we've selected members for 7 complimentary TESOL international memberships. We are currently facilitating memberships under the WMS scheme for IA TEFL, and we're processing over 30 of those now, and we'll have more to come in the early spring. So watch out for that announcement. We have had professional development events all throughout Egypt, including but not limited to Dakhliya, Alexandria, Menofia, Asyut, and Kenna. Special interest groups, and I hope I get them all, including the Learning Technology SIG, the Teacher Education SIG, the Teaching English to Young Learners SIG, the Teaching Evaluation and Assessment SIG, and the Professional Writing SIG, supported throughout the year the professional development of NileTESOL members in both face-to-face and online workshops. The coordinators of these SIGs have done a lot to help us throughout our professional development this year. And then there were over 30 recipients of the RELO-sponsored Fundamentals of English Language Teaching Fellowship. And these scholarship recipients took the FELT, or the FELT Young Learners course at SCE. In a very inspiring ceremony earlier this month, I was very fortunate to attend. They talked about how these courses led to improvements in their own teaching and therefore the learning of their own students. And it was very inspiring to me. So this is just a sampling of what happened. I won't even mention the Mentor Trainer program, which will be featured tomorrow at the General Assembly, and of course the newsletter, which was just published. And Susan Nisnawi is always looking for more submissions for that. So if you have newsletter submissions, please send them in to her. So I want to end by simply saying enjoy this conference. So year after year, for those of us who are veterans of this conference, I think we all recognize this is a big deal. It is a big deal because there is so much that we can learn here, and there are so many relationships professionally and more personally that we can develop during these 2 days. Therefore, we owe it to ourselves to fully participate in this conference. I invite all of you, and I include myself in this, to fully participate. However, our students and our colleagues who might not be here, including colleagues who we might mentor and train in our own workplaces, also are counting on us to use this conference to the most, to the fullest. So I want to finally say, remember that NileTESOL is open all year. There's going to be a lot happening in 2018, and I hope you attend, volunteer, and present at these events. So thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Rania Jaber. I'm co-chair of NileTESOL Conference 2018. I will be very honest with you, but organizing a conference is not an easy task. It's quite challenging. However, with all the support and hard work of many people, the job becomes easier and more manageable. It is like creating a mosaic. Every piece has to fit in place perfectly to create a wonderful piece of art. What I'm trying to say is that the success of this conference depends on many people. I want to first thank SCE for their hard work, support, and professionalism. Special thanks goes to Hanan, Faris, Ibtihal al-Badri, and Hala Dargham. I also want to thank RELO and the British Council for bringing to Cairo our distinguished plenary speakers. Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, John. I want to thank our sponsors. A big thank you goes to our conference sponsors for their support in making this conference a success. A special thank you goes to the International Language Bookstore, ILB, our NileTESOL Platinum sponsor, for all their contributions in the preparation of this conference and in printing of the program book. I also want to thank M&M Publications, Oxford, Pearson, Cambridge University Press, and Nahdat Masr, IDP, Compass Publishing Leaders, and Ahmed East. Thank you also goes to my co-chair, Dr. Mariam Osman, and the organizing committee of the 2018 conference. Thank you very much. Now I want to briefly make a few reminders about our special events in this conference. Our Lightning Talks event, which is a new event, will be held today at 12 noon in Hall PO71. And the 20 by 20 event will be held tomorrow at 2 p.m., also in Hall PO71. A panel discussion is held today at 11 in room PO22. Also, the General SIG event will be held tomorrow at 10 in Hall PO71. Please note that this SIG event is different from the Assessment SIG session, which will be held today at 3 p.m. in room CP07. Added to this, NileTESOL General Assembly will be held tomorrow at 1 p.m. here in Basili Hall. The conference will end tomorrow with the colloquium to be held at 3 p.m. also here in Basili. At the end, I would like to say that attending a conference is a wonderful learning opportunity. So please make the best use of it. Try to attend as many sessions as possible. Network, make new friends, and please enjoy the 2 days. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Mariam Osman. I'm the co-chair for the 22nd NileTESOL conference this year. And of course, I'm grateful for the presence of Provost Abdurrahman, Dean Switzer, and all of our conference attendees, sponsors, organizing committee, etc. But I was looking up at the balcony today, and I was thinking, I started participating in the NileTESOL organizing committee in 2011 when Jonah Moose was the president of NileTESOL. And this is the first time I have seen the upper balcony of the Basili Auditorium filling up with attendees at the opening ceremony. So this is wonderful to see NileTESOL growing and our membership growing as well. I'm not going to repeat all the thanks and gratitude I have for all the people who made this conference possible, except I'm going to mention two things. First of all, we will be having proceedings for this conference, as we did 2 years ago when we combined the 2015-2016 accepted articles and published them in one proceedings. We'll be doing the same this year too for the 2017 and 2018 accepted papers. So please look out for our announcement after the conference, giving you the deadline and where to submit them. Also, you received this slip with information on how to access the Wi-Fi for the conference. You will open up your browsers and you will go to guests, and put in the number given to you here. And the service will be available throughout the 2 days. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a great conference.
Everyone, I would gladly like to introduce David Townhill, Director of English at the British Council, who will introduce our plenary speaker, Pete Sharma.
Good morning, everyone. It was in 1938 that the British Council opened its doors for the first time outside the UK, and that was here in Cairo. Back then, our aim was to create in a country overseas a basis for friendly knowledge and understanding. In 1940, we redefined our aim as promoting a wider knowledge of the UK and the English language abroad and developing closer cultural relations between the UK and other countries. On this year, which is our 80th anniversary, we are still working towards the same aims, and this is still the basis of our reason for being in Egypt. Our longevity in Egypt, and indeed around the world, has been built on partnerships. And this year is our 8th year of partnering with NileTESOL, and it's a great honor to do so. Our work with NileTESOL is still very much part of our promoting English language and developing closer cultural relations. And during the last 8 years, we have sponsored many speakers to be here. Today, that speaker is Pete Sharma. Pete is a teacher and a teacher trainer with a background in business English teaching. He is a consultant with his own consultancy, Pete Sharma Associates Limited, and his organisation works with many other organisations which include the British Council. He's given plenary talks, keynotes and workshops around the world with a particular interest on using technology in language teaching. He's the author and co-author of many books and many aspects of teaching, and his current areas of interest are blended learning, mobile learning, augmented reality and virtual reality. And today he's going to be talking about new technology, empowering learners and developing teachers. So I know it's not me you've come to listen to, it is actually Pete, so I'm going to hand over to Pete now. So please welcome Pete Sharma.
Welcome to everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be here this morning, and it's wonderful to see so many people. This is my 3rd time in Cairo, so it's great to come back. John did a very good job of introducing me, so I'm not going to tell you all the many things that I do, but I would just like to say that most of the books that I've been fortunate to co-write have been about technology, new technology in language learning. And I'm really pleased about 2018 because it sees the birth of my latest book, which is called Best Practices for Blended Learning. So that's me. This is the plenary talk, New Technology, Empowering Learners and Developing Teachers. It's about digital, so I'm going to ask you to do a surprising thing now, which is to find a pen, an old piece of analog technology, and take it out. Think about the learners that you face every day, and could you just decide how autonomous do you think that your learners are generally? Please choose a figure which represents their level of autonomy, ranging from 1, which would be clearly students that have low autonomy, up to 5 highly independent learners. And when you've chosen your figure, please just say hi to the person next to you. Just compare your figures. So I'm going to allow you to do that for 1 or 2 moments. Thank you very much for doing that. I'd love to know which number you've chosen. I've been lucky to work in many parts of the world, many places where learner autonomy is very, very low. Lots of language teaching is curriculum driven, and I've been lucky to work in places where students actually are highly independent, which is very, very interesting. Empowerment, perhaps that's a word that we do need to unpack at this moment. Here's one definition. Please notice the words which are highlighted there. Giving learners the power to make their own decisions about learning. And independence and autonomy are features of good language learners. So, let's move to this plenary, the aims of which are, first of all, to explore how new technology can empower our students. And also, in the area of lifelong learning, to update you as language teachers on some of the exciting innovations, and not simply as teachers to accept these innovations as they are, but to constantly be critical about these new developments. So those are the aims of the plenary, and it's divided into 4 parts. First of all, I'm going to give a very short background to the whole area of technology-enhanced language learning. Then we'll focus on teaching and our students, move on to technology itself, and then in a few brief moments, I'll just sum up some of the implications for our students and for teachers. If you write down one thing in this plenary, that should be it. It's just my name, followed by .com with www in front of it. It's very easy to remember. But if you're studying this area, at master's level perhaps, and you do want the references for this talk, please pop up to that website and you can download the references. If you enjoy the PowerPoint, then you'll be able to click and download a 13-page PDF of all of the slides from this presentation. So hopefully that will allow you to relax a little bit and enjoy the plenary. So let's begin with the background. We are living in the biggest paradigm shift since the printing press. And when you're in the middle of such change, sometimes it's very difficult to actually know where it's all going. Perhaps we think of ourselves as language teachers. That's fine. But every day, we seem to be developing our learners' digital literacies, helping them to search online, helping them to understand the language of texts. Perhaps students are learning English to get a job. They want to create their CV, and they're using the word processor, Word, in order to do that. Maybe they're borrowing fewer books from the library. They're reading on an e-book reader, such as the Kindle. My students can create a much better online presence than me. My picture's super boring. My students' pictures, when they put them up to identify themselves, are really, really exciting. This having an online presence. So here I am at a conference as big as this, delivering a PowerPoint presentation, but students that want to work today often use different tools, such as a Prezi. For me, a Prezi is something that you give somebody for Christmas. But for my students, it's a different kind of tool. So, here are my 5 statements, just to background this area. And the first statement is, it's a hugely controversial area. Could you find yourself on this diagram? I've put teacher in red because I think I'm speaking to a group of teachers. But perhaps you're also learning a language. In that case, you're up there as a student. Could I ask anybody who is studying a master's degree in this area at a university to please raise your hand now? Okay, I can see some hands going up. When I was a language teacher, I didn't know the names of any of the writers who were writing in the fields of theory and research, which I think is very interesting. I could continue my job and have no idea that there were these other areas going on. If you're in charge of a school, if you're a director, critical is making a profit, for example, as well as quality. If you're a teacher trainer, you have to look at the teachers who love technology and the teachers who battle, perhaps, against the technology. So, it's a very, very controversial area, and there are many perspectives on this. So if you find yourself discussing this in the conference, could I just say, that's great, discuss. I think that's a very, very good thing. Discuss whether you do allow your students to take out their phones in the lesson, or whether they hide them under the table and are actually updating their Facebook page instead of studying with you. One of the great English writers has said, and I'll read this because it's very small text, claims from other leading authors that a rise in the use of modern technology was undermining children's grasp of English. In other words, their English was getting poorer, their spelling was getting poorer, something that Dr. David Crystal, who's well known in our field, disagrees with completely. Disagreement is very, very common in this area. Here is my second statement, that CALL is situation specific. What do I mean by CALL? This is a well-known acronym for computer-aided language teaching, and I met a teacher recently who didn't know what CALL stood for, which is very interesting, even though now it's been replaced to a large extent by the term TELL. This is a much sexier term. technology-enhanced language learning. But what it means is that people are doing different things. Schools are at different points in their development. This is a very well-known bell curve of how technologies move through society. People are at different points. So perhaps you're an innovator. Perhaps you are one of the 1,000 people in the USA who trialed Google Glass and had a computer in your glasses. They became known as a very uncomplimentary word, which I cannot tell you in a plenary session, but please find me during the conference and I'll tell you what happened to those 1,000 people. And then Google disbanded the project, so sometimes it can be dangerous to be there. I'd like you to please raise your hand if you don't own a mobile phone. Okay, there's a lady down here. Okay, you may have a very, very good reason not to own a phone. Somebody once said, I don't want anybody to call me, which I think is fair enough, really. But of course, if you are a laggard, you can't really expect that the world won't change. And classrooms throughout the world are also different. Think of your own classroom for a moment. Where are you on this diagram? Do you have everything that you could ever wish for? Or do you have no electricity from time to time? There's a lot of different situations out there. So we're living in a world, really, which is led by the technology. Microsoft, Google, Apple, they bring out products, and we, as educators, have to think, how could I use that in my class? Technology leads, pedagogy nearly always seems to be playing catch-up. Let's move on to the third statement, which is technology, I do believe, really has changed what we do as teachers. It's changed language teaching forever. Even if we don't teach with a computer, we teach language, and we know about language from the work of corpus linguists who studied the language using computers. When you look at the frequency in a learner's dictionary, we know about word frequency from computers. So we have a completely different job. Central to everything is how you feel about this change. How would you describe yourself? Do you think that this glass is half full? Do you think the glass is half empty? Just reflect for a second. How much do you know about technology? This is a fantastic program, isn't it, for this conference? With so many interesting sessions about things that I don't know about. So how much do you know about this area? How much do you use technology in your own lessons? But what's very, very interesting is what's below the waterline, what's hidden, your beliefs, your attitudes. Freeman, the US teacher trainer, said that beliefs and attitudes are far more important than knowledge or skills. Knowledge you can get tomorrow. If you don't know something in the program, Google it. It's there. Knowledge is all around us. But using this is much more difficult depending on where you work. However, it doesn't matter if you're open, if you're healthily skeptical, or even a technophile, then things will change, you will change, and teacher development itself takes place. My final statement is, even though this plenary is kind of about technology, it's really about teaching. Before you can discuss any of the technologies I'm going to move on to talk about later, such as augmented reality, you have to know what it is. There's the internet, so what? I'm a language teacher. What difference does that make to me and to my students? And after that, you can move on and think about how you might use it. So here is a very useful model which can help to situate you in your own development as a teacher. It's called the TPAC model. The T stands for technology, the P for pedagogy, and the C for content. So as a language teacher, you know what a phrasal verb is. That's the content of what we do. You know how to teach phrasal verbs. That's the pedagogical part. So really, the good news is that the technology is just there to help us find phrasal verbs, perhaps. And that, I think, is very, very good news for our profession. We can get on, be teachers, and think about the best ways that technology can support us. So that's really the end of the first part of this talk. It's the background, and I've really been saying it is a highly controversial area. Schools within one country do totally different things. Technology really is changing what we do as teachers, and how we feel about this change is vital to how we develop. And finally, at the end of the day, it always comes back to what's my lesson? What am I doing? What are the outcomes? What are the students going to get? Okay. What's the pedagogy? Of course, it's not all rosy. There is a downside. I'm not going to say anything about this slide. Let's move on now to the second part, which is really taking a look at teaching through using technology. And I'm really going to focus in this talk on how tech can empower our learners. And we'll do that by looking at different areas of language teaching, kicking off with grammar, moving on to vocabulary, a brief mention of pronunciation, and then moving into the language skills, starting with the receptive skills, listening and reading, and then the productive skills of speaking and writing. So, love it or hate it, grammar forms a lot of what we do. And what's very interesting in this day and age is that students can do practice exercises using digital technology 24/7. So if at 3 o'clock in the morning you have an urgent need to know what the difference between the simple past and the present perfect is, maybe your teacher would not welcome a telephone call at that moment, but you can go off and you can do exercises if you like. You can ask your teacher, you can also use an app and access information about grammar. The course books that we've had so far have largely been print, and now there is a gigantic move, I'm sure everybody's seen it, where the course book is moved into a digital form. And that's really challenging, isn't it, for us language teachers in the classroom. There's the book at the bottom, but the student has tapped on video, and the video has opened up on their iPad, and they can listen to the video, and we have to work out how to use these things. Do we always present grammar? Can we give some of that work over to the computer? Are students motivated by games, for instance? This is an example of a fun game, and fun and grammar is nice when it goes together. Here's another fun grammar CD-ROM, which actually presents language. So it's worth thinking through, do you want to do that in class? Do you want to film yourself and then send the students the presentation and use the classroom in a different way? There's all sorts of different things that we can do, different options. Let's move on to vocabulary. And one of the great things, I think, that technology has given our students has been that choice. You can't really say to a student, this is the best way to record your vocabulary. Because each student is an individual and has a different preference. They might choose an analog way, they might choose an app. If you do choose an app, there's quite interesting apps around now which could help you to record and then to practice your new words in between lessons, which I think is a very, very useful thing to do. You can get a CD-ROM dictionary and you can decide which categories would you like to open and then store your new words in the dictionary. That's really quite amazing, so that you can bring back the words from the concept group in which you've decided to open your category. Moving on to pronunciation, many of us teach in classrooms with Adrian Underhill's wonderful sound foundation chart on the wall, and we help them with difficult phonemes like p and b. P, b. Was a very horrible school that called their classes the p group and the b group. The students had to say to the teacher which class they were in. They always had to say, no, 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 I'm not in the b class, I'm in the p class. But nowadays, students should have that here. It's absolutely free. It's in their smartphone, they can click, they can listen, and they can do a lot of pronunciation practice on their own, in their own time, not in front of the rest of the class, which I think sometimes pronunciation work is quite private. So, moving on to the language skills, and I would say that listening has been massively changed by the existence of the internet. In the old day, the teacher would come in, they would have the audio cassette that will show you how old I am, that I remember audio cassettes, then CDs, now podcasts, but in the past, that was the listening that students did. Okay, Unit 5, listen to this. I'm going to play the recording twice. That's what would happen. But nowadays, you can improve your listening where? Where's best? In class? Absolutely, out of the lesson. There's so much around. But you clearly need strategies to help you from the teacher. You can choose what you would like to listen to. This is what many of my students want to listen to. Programs, serials, and they improve their listening through careful strategy work. When I think about being a student nowadays in this digital age, can you imagine just walking around with this kind of wonderful BBC-produced material filtered through a publisher, and then you can just tap, read the words at the same time, see what it is that you're listening to, have all these different choices. Ah, it's too quick! I'm going to pause it. I just want to listen to that bit again. All of this is empowerment. All of this is helping yourself to improve your level of listening. It's a great world, isn't it? Just for music. Nowadays, you're sitting somewhere, you hear a song, you've never heard it before, you open your phone, hold the phone up to the speaker, Shazam it, find out who actually is singing that song, and tap lyrics. And suddenly on your screen, you have all the words for that particular song. Think how quickly you could really raise the level of your listening with these kinds of technologies. If we move to reading, there's a lot of things happening at the moment, and this is a phenomenon that I think we're all aware of. The way that young 14-year-old boys, I'm going to be very gender-specific here, stopped playing football and suddenly started to read. The whole of the nation seemed to be reading these books, and just reading in and of itself, what that does to your vocabulary acquisition. Nowadays, graded readers are devised on the vocabulary count, so you can not only read a book, but you can also go off to the internet and play language games associated with it, Or use your phone as a scanner. Scan the book and then listen to the story being read aloud as you read it. All these things could be very, very encouraging for you. You could become involved reading interactive fiction. So as you work your way through some of the digital materials, you need to make a choice. If you choose yes, then the story goes in one direction. If you choose no, the story goes in a different direction. So you have to find your way out of the maze. This is a very, very interesting thing for many young students to do who are trying to get a job, which is the ultimate goal of this particular piece of software. Or you could subscribe to a free app, such as Flipboard, and then somebody somewhere will curate all the stories out there and just channel the areas that you're interested in into your own personalized digital magazine. And what's really incredible about that, I think, is that it's free. This is absolutely free to just do this. This magazine will pull in your Twitter stream, pull in your Facebook page, and then push it all through the same magazine, which again could be highly motivating for students who might be unwilling to read. Moving on to speaking, there are so many different tools around nowadays that it's very, very encouraging, I think, that you could sit at home, open an internet browser, button, record yourself, and then hit send and send your short recording to the teacher. So the teacher could actually set a small task, students can do that, and if they choose to do that, what's interesting is that they're not often happy with their first attempt, that they actually decide to rehearse and practice their 1-minute talk to get it better and better. And it's this kind of practice in speaking that's helping the learner. Do you speak to your phone? Do you use, if you have an iPhone, Siri and say, "Morning, Siri. What's the weather like today in Cairo?" And then Siri will answer you. You can do a Google voice search. Instead of using the keyboard, speak your search term into your phone. And when you get the return, again, that could be highly motivating for students trying to pronounce the English language. Let's move on now to writing. And in this area, some teachers have set up blogs. Blog is a portmanteau word created from web and log. That's this log like captain's log, this kind of online diary. If you have a class blog, this is one started by a teacher in Spain, everything changes from the project point of view. The students become highly motivated about their grammar accuracy. Excuse me, teacher, please. Is this present simple or present perfect? Because that blog will be seen by everybody around the world. So you want to film your city in a good light, and you want to have a nice dialogue. So these kinds of writing tasks, again, can help students. Students can sit in a presentation like this, turn on a program, such as this one here, and record the whole presentation. The recording comes in sound chunks, so students can delete bits that they don't want, look at the PowerPoint, and then write their notes in the middle. And research has shown that your note-taking skills can be improved dramatically by using these kinds of things. I'm so old-fashioned, I try and write down notes when people are presenting. My students just stand up and take a photograph of the slide. They're much more savvy about how to get the information that they need. Voice to text now has a 95% level of accuracy. So please, if we get the Wi-Fi working, come and see me, speak into this or leave this talk download the free app, Dragon Dictation, speak into it, and see your words come out as text. Can be very, very motivating. So really, I've been looking at how, in different ways, technology can empower students. I've divided it into different individual skills, but in fact, if we look at putting all the skills together, then there are some very, very powerful things that teachers can do. Students can do digital storytelling and be very, very motivated by that. They could create their own avatar using these free programs and give those avatars a voice, which could be very, very motivating for younger students. And finally, just by having project work, our students who are completely happy with some kind of tablet device can go out, photograph, take and edit videos, and they can find that putting themselves into their language learning through digital can be very empowering. That's the end of the second part of the talk, when we've been looking at our students. Let's move on now to you as language teachers. This, by the way, is a picture of me. I'm sorry about this, I'm a yoga fanatic. That before I bought my tablet, this is a photograph of me today, and I hope the message is clear that a tablet is a must-have item. We didn't know this a few years ago before Steve Jobs stood up and showed us what we'd all wanted all our lives. Now I can't have a discussion with my partner without her saying something from the tablet. Shall we go out tonight? Just a minute. Let me find out where to go. Her tablet is part of her way of life. So, let's have a look at some of the areas which are now changing. Some of these technologies are things that I think we need to know about. M-learning or mobile learning. Let me pause for a second so you could just read that definition. Mobile learning is a very, very big move now in terms of language teaching. Could I just say that this definition comes from Wikipedia? So I do have to tell my students, please don't use Wikipedia in your essays. But by the way, I'm going to use Wikipedia as a quote in my plenary talk. But M-learning, of course, has been around for a long, long time when you're learning a language. We used to have a little red book. I don't know why it was red, but we wrote down all the new vocabulary, so learning on the go isn't new. Hockley and Dewdney, who are very key writers in this area, have thought about mobile learning as being when your students move, perhaps, to do a treasure hunt, or when the device is mobile, or when the whole language learning experience is mobile. And it's very interesting because if I say to you, interactive whiteboard, I think everybody in the room knows what I'm talking about. It's a board, and you tap it, and it's interactive. If I say mobile learning, it means completely different things for different people. So it's still a term that we have to think about. Are you talking about using this iPhone in a class? Or are you talking about students using their phones between lessons? Or are we talking about both of these things? Are we talking about a school which takes out a class set of iPads? Could somebody please wave to me if they work in an institution where they have a huge box full of iPads? No, yeah, I'd love to work there. It would be great. Many people work in a situation where students can still use phones, but they just bring out their own phone, bring your own device. Sometimes we use all of that rich content which is on an iPad, And at other times, we just say, Google it. So we just use the phone once. So there's lots and lots of situations here. But it must be said that this is a hugely interesting and controversial area, that there are many, many exciting apps around. Lots of opportunities for using these technologies. But at the same time, mobile... Sorry, just imagining my phone ringing now. Would be disruptive, and it would distract us. So a very interesting area. But certainly, in this area of innovation, mobile learning is a key one. So in the rest of this talk, I'm just going to mention briefly AR, adaptive learning, VR, and then finish off with some exciting developments in the area of technology. Because I believe, sincerely, it's our duties as continually developing teachers to stay abreast of what's going on. So when our teachers come, when our students come and say, I've just started a blog, that you don't say, what's a blog? What's a tweet? This is language, this is our language, so we have to keep abreast of what's happening. So AR, which is where you hold your phone over something which then acts as a trigger and sets off a video, is very, very interesting. So guys, at this plenary, here's your homework task. When you leave, you might download a free app, which is called Aurasma. Go to the Aurasma website and then join Nikki Hockley's channel. Go into the biggest bookshop in Cairo, find Nikki's book, take it off the shelf, hold your phone over it, and then look at the cover through your phone. And that's when the magic of AR starts to happen, because a video will open and Nikki will introduce her book to you as you're standing in the bookshop. But please look around at the expression on the person that's selling the books when you do this, because it will be a great moment. Course books are clearly changing very, very quickly as students hold their phones over the book and start off the video. That's augmented reality. There's a session here on AR at this conference. So if you want to find me, I'm sure I'll be on the back row of that talk. Moving to adaptive learning, here's a definition of adaptive learning. As language teachers, we're very used to this. If you do a placement test, the students don't do all the same test. They come in, if they answer the question correctly, they go on to the next difficult question. If they get that correct, they go on to the next one. Clearly, if they answer the question incorrectly, then the program changes. The program adapts to the student. This is adaptive learning, technology changing in some way to make sure that your experience is personalized, individualized, differentiated. So, let me give you an example of an English language teaching product that uses adaptive learning. Please take a look at the sentence. Think about the missing word. When you've thought about your word, write it down. Fariba, from Iran to Denmark when she was a child. So, there you are, you're trying to learn the language, you type in the word. The very first student types in the word went. So what's the program going to do? What kind of feedback will you get if you wrote Fariba went? Well, first of all, your spelling is perfect. Your grammar is perfect. You changed go to went. Your meaning is perfect. That is absolutely the correct meaning. However, your choice of word, if you look at the feedback, you can see that the word choice feedback is a little faint. It's not so high because there's a better word. And the answer that is most welcome by the piece of software is moved. So if you said moved, well done, guys. But in fact, you could say a lot of things there. A native speaker could put in many different words. So how is the program going to react? These are all the things that teachers need to consider when their students ask the question, teacher, which app should I get to help me with my vocabulary development? So you could say, I don't know. Or you could say, there's a lot of apps around, but it's interesting to know about some of these things. These apps use spaced repetition. The program knows how many mistakes you made. It knows which words you need to recycle, and it will give you a message, beep, on your phone, telling you you have words to practice. One of the biggest discussions at the moment in language teaching is the role of big data. Many publishers are putting more and more information that is learned about our students working on programs into a program which will generate more information that ultimately should help the student. However, there is a huge discussion about big data and whether or not it will help students. Let's move on to VR, or virtual reality, and for this you probably need some kind of headset to drop your phone into, and then you can move off into a different world. It's been around for a long time. Look at that. That's the very, very early attempts at VR. I have a feeling that this is the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, trying out VR many years ago, but that's just my own personal theory. Lots of other things that you might look very silly doing nowadays. It's been around for a long, long time. And nowadays, it's here in language teaching. This is what's happening at the moment. People are scared of tests. People use virtual reality to help people overcome their phobias. So here is virtual reality being used to try out a new program to help students be less anxious when they go and take a test. So there are lots of exciting developments. We laugh about language translation tools because they give the most ridiculous answers. However, we shouldn't really laugh too early, because many of these things can actually give just the right amount of information when you're sitting in a restaurant and you want to know something that the user needs at this point. So certainly some politicians will forget about language teaching. They'll just have their translating earpiece in their ear, and they'll speak to each other in their own language and have everything translated. And it's good sometimes to take a view about that as a language teacher. Yeah, it's great, it's fine, but maybe you don't really learn about the culture that way. AI, artificial intelligence. This is an amazing new app that I've just learned about from Nick Peachy, who's a very great speaker, as you know, in this field. And he's just said you point your phone and the phone gives you some kind of explanation of what it is that you're seeing. So I haven't mentioned the area of assistive technologies, but it's so much easier for dyslexic students, blind students, these people who are in some way impaired, to use technology to help their learning. Wearable technology is very much a thing of the future, and your learning app will beep now and tell you that you have words to revise. Or it will beep because you have to take part in a game. This is one of the most famous new games that have come out, which are so motivating for students. They have to save this astronaut, and in the middle of the lesson, the student says, "Stop, stop, I have to make a decision." And you can imagine lots and lots of students all discussing, how can we save this astronaut? So lots of things happening. That's my last slide about these technological developments. Great news. We have no robot teachers at the moment in the UK. Do you know which country this is? It's a very, very good guess, Japan. It's actually South Korea. This is robot-assisted language teaching. If you look very hard, you can find the teacher. The teacher is there somewhere. I think this robot is very, very attractive, personally. It's only being used with beginners, so if you say, how do you do, I'm sure the robot will say, how do you do? If you say, how do you do, and your answer is, oh, please don't ask. I had a lot of wine last night. The program won't help you, because that's the real world, and that's a completely unexpected answer. So clearly, in the future, there will be many more occasions when teachers are working together with the technology, so that the technology does the searching, and the teacher does what the teacher is good at. So that's the end of the third part of the talk, really, where I'm thinking about our development as language teachers and how we have to keep up to date with lots of things that are happening, even if we reject them. Have a look at where it says machine marking. Students can sit at home, write their essay, and send it to a machine to mark. There are lots of negatives, and there is a huge positive, which is the machine will grade it A2, B1, B2, C1, with an incredible amount of accuracy. That's really a very, very interesting development. So, let me take the last few moments just to finish off, thinking about what the implications are for us. And really, I'm going to focus on two key stakeholders here, which are our students and us as language teachers. Our students are digital residents. They grew up in the digital world. They have high expectations. They might be very tech comfy, but perhaps they're not always so knowledgeable about technology. But one thing that technology can do is provide exposure to the language, input, opportunities for output, even if that output is guided. They can be really, really motivating, and they can help people to focus on form. And it's not an accident at all that these four things are central pillars to second language acquisition, and the words of Jane Willis as she looks at specific tasks. That's our students, hopefully empowered in this new world. And what about us as teachers? Well, we certainly need to know what digital learning means. We need to know what our students are doing outside the lesson. I only used to worry about the 1.5 hour class that they have. Now they have so many things that they do outside. We need to know what they're doing. And you can direct students to useful materials to help them with their learning. There's lots of things that will help us as teachers in our continuing professional development. We can find out which digital competencies we need. We can track our continual personal development through technology. And finally, there's so many great books out there that can help us on our journey. So, thank you so much. I hope that that's what we've done in this talk. Looked at technology as a way of empowering students. Hopefully, we've had a look at some of these new innovations that we can keep up with. That's where you've been, and I would just like to say a very, very big thank you for the invitation and to you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Mr. education here at AUC. Before my current position, I was the head of the English department at CIC, because it allows your teachers to be critically engaged, which is something very important. It gives a chance for those high-capacity teachers that are important and decide what they feel they want to learn in order to improve inside their classrooms and to be able to find solutions for those. And so it's learning here. The learning process is consistent. It is necessary for all our teachers as well to improve and to her perspective as a teacher or as an instructor.
According to the literature, also teachers prefer PSC that, and then hopefully they would start taking or bringing themselves into accountability.
In the plenary that we just attended, which Pete Sharma mentioned, he was talking about how, or what I got from it was that we need to do it. So basically, teacher agency then is very much important in this process. The curriculum-driven, follow the textbook 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the test. You have to do this test. Prepare the students for the test. So the autonomy of the teacher is kind of taken away, and the teacher doesn't feel like they have as much say.
And you were saying that autonomous, right? What's the title of the what's the title of the conference? Lifelong learning, right? Well, yes, in my presentation is not very little, right? There's no way we can teach them everything they need to know if all we do in a responsible, sort of principled way, you are going to allow them continue to learn. I love that. I just had another teacher tell me about. Ooh, that's a great point. So if I tell a student something, they're going to maybe believe it. Or if I take I was just talking to somebody who I corrected somebody's paper and the student didn't believe the instructor, right? Thought, no, that's not right. But if you have some kind of evidence-based research that the student can conduct, it makes it more believable, and it'll maybe give them a stronger connection to it, help them remember it better, and help them take it more seriously. Good point. So what I'm going to do...